An hour's drive from Vancouver lies a place where natural beauty masks mortal danger. The famous Shannon Falls, with its emerald pools, attracts adventure seekers from all over the world. But behind the picture-perfect tourist brochure lies something that is often not discussed: invisible moss on the rocks, suddenly strengthening currents, and rushing white water that pulls anyone who falls into it to the bottom. On a hot July day, a group of young people whose travel videos have been viewed by millions decide to take a dip in a place that local lifeguards call the point of no return. What happens in the next few seconds will forever change the lives of millions of their followers and raise the question: where is the line between inspiration to live life to the fullest and mortal danger? The High on Life movement originated from a school friendship in the suburbs of Vancouver. Its ideologues, Riker Gamble and Alexei Liak, who grew up in middle-class families where travel was a luxury, dreamed of more. In 2012, they and their close friends, who formed the core of the Future Collective, made a decision that their parents called crazy. They sold everything they owned and bought one-way tickets. The plan was simple to the point of naivety: travel the world, shoot videos, and hope that YouTube would one day start paying enough to sustain the travel lifestyle. The breakthrough happened almost by accident. A humorous dance clip filmed on a phone in a hostel in Thailand gained 10 million views, and the channel began to grow by thousands of subscribers a day. By 2018, it had already become a real empire with a massive social media audience. Brands sponsored their trips, and online courses generated substantial revenues. Their philosophy was contagious and straightforward. Life is too short for office routine, and every day should be an adventure. This positive message resonated with millions of young people worldwide. But there was a downside to this pursuit of the perfect shot and a life without rules. In 2016, while traveling through U.S. national parks, the group strayed from the official trail in Yellowstone to film a video at a fragile geothermal spring. The video garnered millions of views, but it also attracted the attention of the authorities. The violators were found through geotags on social media. In 2017, Gamble and Liak received a prison sentence of 1 week, hefty fines, and a 5-year ban on visiting U.S. national parks. After their release, the group published an apology. Still, their philosophy remained the same, best expressed in their motto: life is too short to always follow the rules. This approach, which brought them fame, has already shown its price, and soon they would have to pay it in full. On July 3, 2018, Vancouver enjoyed perfect summer weather. 75.2 degrees, clear skies, a light breeze from the ocean. Riker Gamble woke up in his apartment overlooking the bay and wrote in the group chat, "The weather is awesome. Shall we go to the waterfalls?" Alexei Liak was the first to respond. His girlfriend, Megan Scraper, known on social media as Mindy Lev, was also in. Another friend from their regular group joined them. No filming, no special equipment. Just 4 young people who decided to visit a waterfall and take a dip on a sweltering day. Shannon Falls was only an hour's drive away on the scenic sea-to-sky highway. They left around 10 a.m., stopping along the way for coffee and snacks. Music played in the car, and plans for their next trip to Asia were discussed. Megan also showed photos from a recent trip to the Philippines. No one brought professional cameras or stunt equipment. It was a day off, not a work shoot. Just a normal trip with normal friends. Except these friends were used to their everyday lives being more exciting than most extreme movies. That day, in the mountains of British Columbia, glacier melt had intensified due to an unusually hot week. The water in the mountain streams rose 30% above normal levels, but weather reports are only of interest to rescuers, not tourists who are just going for a swim. Shannon Falls greeted the 4 friends with its usual splendor. 100 feet of water cascading down granite cliffs created a constant roar that could be heard from the parking lot. The official viewing platform was at the foot of the waterfall, where tourists took selfies against the backdrop of the white wall of water. But the High on Life group wasn't there for standard photos. They knew about a trail that locals kept secret from ordinary tourists. The unofficial route led to the upper pools of the waterfall, where you could swim in the emerald water without encountering crowds of people with cameras. The trail began inconspicuously, off the main route. No signs, no warning signs, just a well-trodden path leading steeply upward between the trees. Locals called it the Trail to the Shannon Pools, but Squamish rescue services used a different name, the Point of No Return. The reason was the nature of the waterfall. Unlike most mountain streams, Shannon was fed by the Stadium Glacier in Sky Pilot Valley. The melting ice created unpredictable fluctuations in the water level. In the morning, the pool could be a calm lake, and by noon it could turn into a boiling cauldron of white water. During a particularly intense week in early July 2018, the glacier melted. The temperature remained above 77 degrees for the 5th consecutive day. The water flow increased by a third of its usual volume. However, this information was only of interest to hydrologists and rescue personnel. Tourists saw only beautiful pools of clear water, perfect for swimming on a hot day. Another feature made the upper pools particularly dangerous. Constant mist from the waterfall settled on the rocks, creating ideal conditions for moss growth. A thin layer of vegetation made the wet stones as slippery as an ice rink, but it was impossible to distinguish a dangerous rock from a safe one. They all looked the same, gray and wet. The ascent began around 11 a.m. The trail immediately took a steep upward turn, forcing us to stop every 10 minutes to catch our breath. Riker led the way, clearing a path through tree roots and rocky ledges. Alexei followed him, then Megan, and their fourth companion brought up the rear. The first 20 minutes were spent walking through an old forest. Giant fir trees cast shadows, and ferns reached up to our waists. Sometimes the trail disappeared, and they had to navigate by the traces of previous travelers. Broken branches, trampled grass, random marks on trees. Halfway through, the nature of the route changed. The forest ended, and open rocky areas began. Here, local enthusiasts had installed ropes to help with the climb. Old climbing ropes tied to trees and rocks helped us overcome the steepest sections. They met several groups of tourists coming down the mountain. A young couple from Germany warned them that it was very slippery at the top, almost like ice. A group of local teenagers claimed that the water was freezing, but they said you could swim if you were brave enough. Everyone exchanged polite smiles, but these everyday warnings, which on any other day would have gone unnoticed, hung in the air with unspoken anxiety. After a 45-minute climb, the first view of the pools opened up. A series of natural baths carved out of granite by water over thousands of years. The water in them had an incredible emerald hue, contrasting with the gray stone. Some pools were the size of hot tubs. Others resembled small lakes. The group stopped at one of the lower pools. The water looked calm, almost motionless. But Alexei, looking closely, noticed a strong current beneath the surface. Water flowed in on one side and out on the other, creating constant circulation. They decided to climb higher, where the pools seemed more protected. The last 330 feet of the climb were the most difficult. The trail ran right along the edge of the waterfall. To the left was a view of the valley below, and to the right was the roar of the water. The width of the safe passage narrowed to 3 feet in places. The mist from the waterfall made the rocks wet and slippery. Around noon, the four reached the upper pools. The place looked like a natural spa complex, with several stone pools featuring crystal clear water, surrounded by vertical rock walls. The noise of the main waterfall was muffled here, creating a peaceful background. They chose the largest pool, located 15 feet from the edge of the cliff. The water was cold, 50 degrees, but after an hour of climbing in the sun, it felt like a blessing. First, they checked the depth. Riker threw a rock and counted the seconds until it splashed. About 9 feet, enough for safe swimming. The guys went into the water first. The cold was stinging, but after a minute, their bodies got used to it. Megan sat on a rock, taking pictures with her phone and laughing at her friend's grimaces from the cold water. The fourth member of the group explored the surroundings, checking out the other pools. After 15 minutes in the water, everyone got out to warm up in the sun. They sat on flat rocks, discussing whether to try the upper pool. It was smaller, but closer to the main waterfall, which created a more dramatic view for photos. Megan was the first to get up. She wanted to take some pictures from a better angle. The edge of the pool dropped off into the waterfall, but there were about 6 feet of rocks between the water and the cliff, a safe distance under normal conditions. She stepped onto a wet rock closer to the edge, then another. She was looking for the perfect spot where the waterfall would be visible in the frame, but she could stand safely without risk. She turned her back to the cliff to take a selfie with the waterfall in the background. Her right foot slipped. It wasn't a sharp fall, but a treacherous, almost imperceptible shift under her foot. The feeling when the world loses its grip on reality for a split second. A second of panic flashed in Megan's eyes as she tried to grab at the air. She fell onto her back and slid toward the edge. The distance was only 6 feet, but the slope of the rocks and the water on the surface made them a slippery slide. Megan tried to grab hold with her hands, but the wet granite offered no support. Her scream caught the attention of the others. Alexei reacted instantly. His girlfriend was sliding toward the cliff, and he jumped into the pool, trying to swim out and grab her. But the current, invisible on the surface, was much stronger than it appeared. The water carried him in the same direction Megan was sliding. Riker saw that both of his friends were in danger. His childhood best friend and his girlfriend were struggling against the current that was dragging them toward the edge of a 100-foot cliff. He dove in after them, hoping his weight and strength would turn the tide. The current proved stronger than the 3 young people. The water, intensified by the melting glacier, rushed toward the cliff at the speed of a mountain river. Megan reached the edge first and disappeared in a cloud of spray. Alexei, who was trying to hold her back, followed a second later. Riker struggled for a moment longer, but the current pulled him away too. 100 feet down. Not a straight fall, but down a cascade of waterfalls, hitting rocks and ledges. The water falling from above by the ton gave them no chance to swim. The white foam made it impossible to breathe. The cold paralyzed their muscles. The fourth member of the group stood frozen for a few seconds. Just now, his 3 friends had disappeared into the whirlpool of white foam. The place where they had just been laughing and taking pictures was now empty. Only wet footprints on the rocks reminded him that a minute ago there had been people here. His first instinct was to jump in after them, to try to help, to save them, to pull them out. But reason prevailed over emotion. Jumping into the same stream would mean a 4th victim. The only thing he could do was run for help. The descent, which had taken an hour on the way up, took him 20 minutes. He jumped over rocks, slid on wet roots, and grabbed ropes to keep from falling. Several times he slipped, breaking his knees and palms on the rocks. But the adrenaline drowned out the pain. Halfway down, he met a group of tourists climbing up. He shouted at them to go back and call the rescue service. 3 people had fallen from the waterfall. Help was needed, urgently. The tourists did not immediately understand the seriousness of the situation. The young man looked like a madman, wet, covered in blood, shouting about some kind of tragedy. There was cell phone coverage near the parking lot. At 11:55, he called 911. The operator answered the call and transferred it to the Squamish Rescue Service. He provided the coordinates of the location, the number of victims, and a description of the incident. 3 people had been swept away by the current from the upper pools of Shannon Falls. They had fallen from a height of about 100 feet. The first rescue vehicle arrived 15 minutes later, 2 paramedics and a police officer, but they could only assess the scale of the problem. The operation at the waterfall required special equipment and trained personnel. Squamish Rescue Service Commander Landon James received the call at 12:10 p.m. He knew this call by heart. Upper Shannon Pools. Every time he heard those words on the radio, he felt the same thing. A heavy mixture of professionalism and weary resignation. He already knew that he was most likely not going to rescue, but to recover. And the most challenging question for his team was how to do it without risking their own lives. By 2 p.m., the leading group of 20 volunteer rescuers had arrived at the scene. The helicopter made a reconnaissance flight over the waterfall. Still, the thick fog from the falling water made visibility almost zero. The pilot could only confirm that brightly colored clothing was visible in the lower pool of the waterfall. The descent to the lower pool took 3 hours. The rescuers moved along slippery rocks, organizing safety measures at each difficult section. It was impossible to carry a stretcher along such a route, so they decided to use a helicopter for evacuation, if they found survivors. The first body was found at 5:20 p.m. Megan Scraper was lying on the rocks at the edge of the lower pool. Falling 100 feet through the waterfall cascades left her no chance of survival. Medics pronounced her dead from multiple injuries. Alexei Liak was found an hour later, 160 feet downstream. The force of the current had dragged his body over the rapids and rocks. His attempt to save the girl cost him his life. He died doing what he thought was right. Raker Gamble was found last, already at dusk. His body was stuck between rocks in the lowest pool. Alexei's best friend since childhood, he jumped in to save both of them and shared their fate. The evacuation of the bodies took all night. The helicopter could not operate in the dark and fog, so rescuers set up a temporary camp and waited for dawn to break. It was not until the morning of July 4th that the 3 bodies were lifted to the helipad and taken to the Vancouver morgue. On the evening of July 3rd, local media reported the deaths of 3 people at Shannon Falls. Routine news for a mountainous region. But on the morning of July 4th, when the names were released, the internet exploded. High on Life, 1 million followers. The very same guys from the viral videos had died while swimming. Their Instagram account was flooded with thousands of comments per minute, a mixture of condolences, shock, and accusations of fake news by the media. The story instantly went global, picked up by dozens of media outlets from the BBC to CNN, which called the incident the tragedy of the Instagram generation. Old videos of the group began to surface online. The last video, in which Riker jumped off a 50-foot cliff with the words, "Life is too short not to jump," garnered millions of new views. This cruel irony turned the comments section into a spontaneous memorial. People shared stories about how the channel inspired them to change their lives. While the world mourned publicly, the parents of the deceased grieved in silence after learning of the tragedy from the police. Riker's mother later admitted that she couldn't believe her son was dead. He had seemed invulnerable. 3 days later, the remaining members of High on Life prepared to release a video message that would forever preserve the memory of their friends. On July 6, 2018, a video titled "To Our Friends and Families" appeared on the High on Life channel. In the first 24 hours, it was viewed by 10 million people. It was 5 minutes of raw, unadulterated grief that united the world. The remaining members of the group sat in front of the camera, young people with red eyes from crying and trembling voices. In a unified stream of memories, they painted portraits of those they had lost. It was not just a tribute, but an attempt to bring the real Riker, Alex, and Megan back to the world. They spoke of them as the kindest and most determined people, whose departure left a huge void in the world. They recalled how Riker could make them laugh in the most hopeless situations, how Alexei was always ready to help, and how one smile from Megan could change everything around her. These words were interrupted by a poignant contrast, a montage of unpublished footage. On the screen, 3 friends laughed, danced, and hugged each other on mountaintops and paradise beaches, alive, happy, doing what they loved most. This montage was a hymn to their lives, not a requiem for their deaths. But the key words that changed everything were spoken by Riker's cousin, Rob Mangelsdorf. His simple, pained phrase became the primary defense against accusations of recklessness. They just wanted to go swimming. They weren't doing anything stupid. These words destroyed the narrative of reckless extremists. Suddenly, everyone understood. 3 young people died doing what thousands of people do every summer. The tragedy was not in their pursuit of content, but in a cruel, unpredictable accident. The video ended with the group's manifesto about living in the moment, and this call was heard. A flash mob exploded on social media, where people shared photos of their adventures, paying tribute to their philosophy. The final point in this public tragedy was the farewell ceremony on July 19th. The church could not accommodate everyone who wanted to attend the service. 3 coffins covered with Canadian flags and 3 portraits of smiling young people became a silent symbol of 3 lives cut short at their peak. The tragedy at Shannon Falls divided public opinion into 2 irreconcilable camps. The first saw the incident as the predictable end of a reckless pursuit of popularity. The second defended the memory of the victims, insisting that it was an accident that could have happened to anyone. The discussion unfolded at all levels. On morning talk shows, safety experts talked about the responsibility of influencers to their audience. Psychologists analyzed the phenomenon of risky behavior for the sake of likes. Parents demanded tighter control over the content their children watch. Statistics added fuel to the fire. After each viral, high-on-life video, emergency services recorded a surge in accidents in the exact locations. Teenagers attempted to replicate the waterfall jumps without any prior experience or training. In 2017, there were 12 deaths directly related to attempts to copy stunts from social media. But the group's defenders cited other figures. Millions of people started traveling, inspired by their videos. Thousands came out of depression, finding meaning in the philosophy of the moment. Hundreds wrote that High on Life's content literally saved them from suicide by showing them the beauty of the world. A sociology professor at the University of British Columbia published a study that revealed a paradox. The same qualities that made the group inspiring also made them a dangerous example. Their charisma, fearlessness, and optimism created the illusion that risk is always justified and luck is endless. The industry reacted swiftly. YouTube updated its rules to prohibit content that encourages dangerous behavior. Instagram began tagging posts with extreme stunts with warnings, but everyone understood that these were cosmetic measures that would not change the essence of the problem. Professional climbers and rescuers took the most rigid stance. For years, they had warned about the dangers of romanticizing risk. Squamish Rescue Service Commander Landon James made a statement that many considered too harsh. Every time someone posts a selfie from the edge of a cliff, they are playing Russian roulette. Sooner or later, there will be a bullet in the chamber. The only question is how many people will follow suit in imitation. But the most painful question was asked by the parents of teenagers. How do you explain to a child the difference between an inspiring example and deadly stupidity? Where is the line between a life full of adventure and unjustified risk? There was no easy answer. 7 years have passed since that July day. Shannon Falls continues to flow, as it did for thousands of years before the tragedy, and will continue to do for thousands of years after. Nature knows no compassion or malice. It simply exists, majestic and indifferent to human drama. The trail to the upper pools is officially closed. Warning signs in 3 languages explain the danger. The penalty for violating the ban is $5,000. But every summer, rescuers pull new adventurers out of the water. The prohibitions only add to the place's appeal. The High on Life channel exists as a digital memorial. The last video was posted in 2019, a year after the tragedy. The remaining members filmed a trip to Hawaii in memory of their friends. There were no more extreme stunts, just beautiful views and quiet conversations about how important it is to appreciate every day. Megan Scraper dreamed of writing a book about her travels. After her death, her sister published her diaries and notes. The book became a bestseller in Brazil. The last entry is dated July 2nd in 2018. Tomorrow we are going to the waterfalls. They say it is wonderful there. I can't wait. Alexei Lyak left behind a course on Instagram promotion and philosophical posts about the meaning of travel. His last post received 5 million likes posthumously, a photo of the sunset over the ocean, and the caption, "Every moment is unique. Live so that you have no regret." Riker Gamble recorded a video a year before his death, as did all the members of the group. This is standard practice for people who constantly take risks. In it, he said, "If you're watching this, it means something has happened to me. Don't cry. I've had more adventures in my years than most people have in a lifetime. Just promise me you'll continue to explore this amazing world." The name of the fourth friend, the only witness to the tragedy, remains unknown to the public at his own request. The trauma of witnessing the death of 3 loved ones and the inability to help left a deep mark on him. He underwent long-term therapy and completely refused to appear in public. The families of the victims respect his decision to remain in the shadows, understanding the heavy burden of the survivor. Rescuer Landon James, who led the operation, continues to give lectures on mountain safety. He always ends with one sentence: "The mountains and waterfalls will always be here. You only have one life. Respect nature more than likes." Shannon Falls flows today just as it did on that July morning in 2018. Water falls from a height, crashes against rocks, and collects in emerald pools. The sun creates a rainbow in the spray. Tourists take photos from a safe viewing platform. Beauty remains beauty. Danger remains danger. The question posed at the beginning of this story remains unanswered. Where is the line between inspiration to live life to the fullest and mortal danger? Everyone draws it for themselves. 3 young people drew it in the upper pools of Shannon Falls. They just wanted to take a dip on a hot day. They paid the ultimate price for a few seconds when that line was crossed. The story of Raker, Alexei, and Megan is not a prohibition on adventure, but a reminder of the price of the moment. They sincerely believed that the world was a playground full of beauty to be explored and discovered, but they forgot that this playground has rules written not by man, but by nature. And very often in this game, you only get one try.